The proclamation of the Holy Gospel according to Matthew. Jesus began to address the chief priests and elders of the people once more using parables. The reign of God may be likened to a king who gave a wedding banquet for his son. He dispatched his servants to summon the invited guests to the wedding, but they refused to come. A second time, he sent other servants, saying, "Tell those who were invited, 'See, I have my dinner prepared. My bullocks and corn-fed cattle are killed. Everything is ready. Come to the feast.' Some ignored the invitation and went their way, one to his farm, another to his business. The rest laid hold of his servants, insulted them, and killed them. At this, the king grew furious and sent his army to destroy those murderers and burn their city. Then he said to his servants, 'The banquet is ready, but those who were invited were unfit to come. That is why you must go out into the byroads and invite to the wedding anyone you come upon.' The servants then went out into the byroads and rounded up everyone they met, bad as well as good. This filled the wedding hall with banqueters. When the king came in to meet the guests, however, he caught sight of a man not properly dressed for a wedding feast. 'My friend,' he said, 'how is it you came in here not properly dressed?' The man had nothing to say. The king then said to the attendants, 'Bind him hand and foot and throw him out into the night to wail and grind his teeth. The invited are many, the elect are few.'" The Gospel of the Lord.
Our Gospel for this Sunday comes from the Gospel according to St. Matthew, a parable given by Jesus, and the main feature was a king who tenders a wedding banquet for his son and invited so many people. God's graciousness, inviting people to his feast. We have been developing the theme of God's graciousness and our human response. In the first reading on Mount Zion, according to Isaiah, God will offer to his people food, good food, and choice wines. God will also remove the veil that blurs our vision and direction in life. God will destroy death forever. God will wipe away tears from our faces. And God will forgive sins. Oh, this is a gracious God, the Good Shepherd leading us to green pastures. And according to the responsorial psalm, we will want for nothing. But what is the response? The fitting response to the gracious God. In the first reading from Isaiah, the fitting response was contemplation, beholding God, adoring God, proclaiming the salvation that God has afforded us. In the second reading, St. Paul, in his letter to the Philippians, is a person who has experienced God's graciousness in the form of strength to endure anything. So, St. Paul was subjected to different types of experiences, good ones, comfortable ones, difficult ones, trials. But in all of these, he experienced God's graciousness in the form of strength. And the Philippians became instruments of God's gracious love because they shared in the sufferings and the hardships of St. Paul. Again, abounding grace, even mediated by other people. What was the response of St. Paul? Glorification of God. Just like in the first reading, you glorify God who is gracious. But the other response of St. Paul is praying for others. He became generous himself to others. You have received from the gracious God, now be gracious also to others. in the gospel, we find a disturbing reality. The first two readings are quite ideal, but in the gospel, we find this God who is really bent on making His love felt by other people. In the parable, there was this banquet prepared by a king for the wedding of his son. And he sent his servants to invite everyone. This act of inviting everyone and having prepared the meal, according to the parable, the king had already killed the bullocks and corn-fed cattle, and everyone is invited. How gracious God is. He opens the whole banquet to everyone. Now, the mystery of the response or lack of response. The first time the servants went to the people, they refused to come. Oh, this is surprising. You're already being given free dinner and you refuse. A second time, the king sent the servants again. Look how generous he is. He doesn't want his gifts to be wasted. So he sent his servants again, insisting on having the people come to the banquet. But they did not only ignore the servants, they did not only refuse to come, they insulted the servants, they harmed the servants. My God, look at this. Oh, they killed some of the servants. They insulted the servants, they killed. Imagine, could this be true? Could this be real? You are invited to a dinner and then you kill the one who brings the invitation? Is Jesus here exaggerating? But he has a point. He really is shocking us in this enormous disproportion between the invitation from a gracious God and the violent reaction from some people. Now, the gracious God became furious. You cannot expect God to be happy with the way His gracious invitation was rejected. And so He sent the servants to the byways to invite everyone, the good or the bad. The feast must go on, and it is open to all. And it is good that many came. But at the end of the story, there was one person who did not wear the wedding garment supposedly given by the king. And so this person was not fully fit for the dinner. And so he was thrown out. My dear brothers and sisters, the three readings for today give us a picture of how good God is, how gracious God is. But we are also being taught a lesson. There is a mystery in human response. We could be responsive to God. We could praise God. We could be grateful to God. But we could also be hard-hearted. We could refuse to respond to God. This is the mystery of the human heart. And so for this Sunday, we are being asked, first, to open our eyes to the many wonders God performs in our lives. Many times we fail to behold. Many times we are not sensitive to what God is doing in our lives. We keep on complaining, seeing what we lack, but we do not appreciate the bountiful goodness and graciousness of God. So first, open our eyes, the eyes of faith. See how good God is. But the second thing is, let us review our quality of response to God. Let us not pretend that every day, every moment, we appreciate God's gift and we cooperate with God's grace. We have the capacity to refuse God's grace. We have the capacity to say no, to ignore God, and to return to our own private, selfish business. We have that capacity. And let us be fearful. We should not waste God's gift. To the young listening to us, to the youth, do not waste God's gift for you. Your education, the efforts of your parents. Do not be ungrateful. Be people who open yourselves to God's grace and be responsible in the use of those graces. To the parents, you have your children as God's gift. To the public officials, this is trust on the part of God. This is a grace, giving you the opportunity to serve. Do not waste it. Do not close your hearts. Do not refuse to welcome God's grace and to make that grace of God operate in your life and be you becoming a channel of God's grace to other people. Let me end this sharing with a short story. I've been working in the seminary for a long time, and part of my task as a seminary personnel is to help people see the grace of God's calling in their lives and to help people discern where their calling really is, whether they are meant for priesthood or not. But a big part of formation is opening the eyes of people. And that it warms my heart, especially during retreats, where people cry, not because of sorrow, but because they're overwhelmed by the goodness of God. And they feel so small. I do not deserve this. This has been my experience in every retreat, especially the long retreat, the 30-day retreat of seminarians. It is a moment of accepting how gracious God is. Once I had a directee who decided to leave the seminary. I myself was quite worried because it was not yet clear to me whether he had the grace of vocation or not. But there were some indications that he might have received from God the grace of vocation. But when he finally said goodbye, his mother approached me and said, "Father, what if the grace was given to him and my son simply refused to accept that gift? I am afraid for my son. I am afraid for my son." I really appreciate that mother. She had that sensitivity. She knew God's grace should not be wasted. But I know that she has been praying for her son so that the gracious God would wipe away all tears and will forgive our failings. The word has been exposed. Let us now fulfill it.